Now, to begin with, right, a lot of people talk about what are the core things that a product manager does. I was just thinking about it. This slide, I'm sorry, I just made it like 5 minutes back or whatever, half an hour back. Uh, the the four most important things that a product manager does are there on your screen right now. And I will, if I were to mark them, right, give me 1 second. I would say you start here. You start with your market and customer first. And if you remember the previous talk that I did on how do you even go from an idea all the way to a backlog, if you remember in that idea to backlog talk, we talked about how do you figure out what the market is? How do you figure out what the business is going to be? How do you figure out your customer persona? How do you figure out your customer problems, etc., etc., etc.? All of that is your initiation of your product journey, right? All of that we've heard, we can relate to it. Now, once you've initiated that journey, if you remember, I translated all of that into a product backlog. Now, of course, product backlog was just the beginning of it, right? After you've put it in the product backlog, then what do? You execute. There are so many things around services that you have to take care. There's an execution cycle, whether the product is going right, not right. You're prioritizing well, talking to customers, getting feedback, blah, blah, blah. So many things. We'll deep dive into this as well. I'm just giving you a high level overview. Okay. Now, if you see, right, from an execution standpoint, you're primarily doing these two things only. But there are two more things which are very, very critical, and that is the team. Now, what is the team? Now, when I say team, right, every product manager has a team, and I'm not talking about people who are reporting to you. Not just that. There could be people reporting to you at senior levels. I'm talking about the engineering team who's not reporting to you, but imagine, just think about it, right? You have a product vision. You created a backlog. Based on your vision and backlog, an entire team of 12 engineers is going to be working on that. Imagine their promotion, the quality of work they do, the quality of value they ship is based on 1 and 2. If you have not done 1 and 2 properly, trust me, there will be teams who will be building products that will never get shipped. Therefore, you will be eating into their promotions as well. So very, very, very important that you actually are responsible for the quality of work for your team as well. And it's not just the engineering team, by the way. It is your design team. If you envision suboptimal product, your design is building suboptimal products. Your engineering is building suboptimal products. Your research team is doing some research which is completely invalidated, not required. Your legal team is spending time on things which they shouldn't spend on. Your sales and marketing team is doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Why? Because 1 and 2 went wrong. So you can imagine the gravity of 1 and 2. But you also, did you just realize what I just said? I said you as a product manager are the liaison for all of these guys. Engineering, UX, research, legal, sales, marketing, etc., etc., etc. You are the glue that is holding all of them together. Therefore, having the ability to work with teams, managing stakeholders, working without authority, making sure everything falls in place at the right time becomes so critical, right? So that's why team management or stakeholder management becomes such an important part. And all of these will depend on various phases of the product, which I'll talk about. Last, now I've written partner here, which may not be true for all product companies, but at least in Microsoft context, I'll tell you. For every dollar that Microsoft makes, right, around $8 to $10 are made by our partners. Okay. So therefore you can imagine how critical our partners may be. And who is our partner? Our partner could be an independent service vendor. It could be a system integrator. It could be anybody who is, or a training company or a lab service provider, anybody. A lot of Microsoft products, and for that matter, any of the big organization products, they operate with their partner ecosystem. At times our partners are developers who are building products on top of Microsoft products. At times our partners are hardware vendors who are providing hardware to us that we are able to use. Xbox, it's a hardware game, right? Now, all of these are our partners. A lot of product managers in Microsoft spend their time working with their partners as well. Okay, now you would ask, Sandeep, you have drawn 4 coordinates. Is the time equally distributed? Absolutely not. Let's say there is a product which is in incubation stage, right? You're just thinking about Okay, people waiting in the lobby. I need to admit them. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry for the disturbance. Prashant. Okay. So, by the way, did anyone see the pop-up that Prashant entered? Or it was just me?
Only co-host gets a pop-up.
Is it?
Or
I
what?
saw it.
You saw, huh? Udit?
Yeah.
Udit, can you add people
Yeah, I'll
when
take
they
care of
come
it.
next? Okay, Udit, you have been voluntold. It's a new term, which means you did volunteer, but I told you to volunteer. So you've been voluntold. Okay. Anyways, by the way, it's a real English word. So talking about partners, now I was talking about when do you focus on market, customer, on product, on team and partners? Imagine you're beginning a product. Your entire focus is on your market and potential customers and users and the various personas we talked about, right? You are not thinking about right now, oh, do I have a team? How does my product look like? I am not in the execution cycle? Who are my part? You're not doing that. You're totally focused on who's my market, what's my market looking like, what's my customer, who's my competition, etc., etc. And we talked about all of those things. Everything that I said in that idea to backlog talk is nothing but point number one and nothing else. Okay. As soon as a backlog is created, now imagine you have ideated, your leadership has signed off, great job done, fantastic. What is the very next thing you will do? The very next thing you will be doing is not your product backlog. You will need to figure out your team who's going to work with, right? If you're a junior PM, maybe you don't need to set up teams on your own. If you are maybe at a principal or partner level, you go figure out, build your teams. You have to get your 12 engineers, get how many PMs you want, do the costing, present it to the leadership, and then build your team, go hire, recruit, right? Therefore, team comes next. And then comes the product. Once you are there, your business value has been evaluated, your team is in place, then you go build the product. While you're building product, you completely stay in close loop with your partners, because as your product builds, your partners need to know what product you've built so that they can generate revenue out of it. So product building and partner goes hand in hand. As I said, day zero, when you're envisioning, you are totally focused on one. Your 100% pie is one. When you are in the execution state, maybe 50% of the time is going in product building. At times you'll be 5 out of 7 days in a week you'll be spending on partner development, right? So amount of time you spend on all four of these could be different, but at the end of the day you are doing all four of these. Okay, now if you see, team and partner development is a very soft skill base. It's more stakeholder management than anything. Like, you don't have a deliverable to give it to your team, right? Whatever deliverables are there, they are part of the product phase. You create specs, designs, wireframes, etc. With your team, you are basically bringing them together. You're bringing your partners together. So therefore, for the simplicity of this conversation, I have divided all of this into just three phases: your market, your product, and your soft skills. Okay. And I will be dealing into all three in detail. So let's talk about market for a moment. Okay. If you remember our previous talks, none of this would be alien to you. What is the market size? The TAM, SAM and SOM that we talked about. For those who are new, see the previous talk on total addressable market, the availability of the market, and the operative or the operational market that you can target. Okay, or the operable market. Who's your customer? We talked about not only addressing the stated needs but the unstated needs. In the previous talk, when we talked about idea to backlog, we talked about how should you look at competition also. You're not looking at competition to copy. You're looking at competition to reduce your learning curve. Therefore, what is your potential roadmap? What is the potential business value? All of that goes into your market analysis. And if you remember, what I said was, at the end of your market analysis, you present a business plan and a product roadmap to leadership, including costing, etc., which will say, this is the idea. It will fetch us $100 million, for which I need an investment of $10 million, for which I need a team of 13 people. And once all of that is signed, you get into your product life cycle. And in your product life cycle, if you remember, we build the backlog. So now let's look at what does your responsibility look like when you are building your product. So what do you do in product? Again, none of these should be alien to you. You have to identify the persona whom you are catering to. After doing that, you define your problem. After defining the problem, you come up with a solution. After coming up with a solution, you break it down into small features. And while doing that, you work with the engineering team to figure out what the technology architecture will be. Once all of that is done, you figure out what is your MVP. Therefore, prioritization comes here. Now, at this stage, right, a lot of senior PMs or maybe principal PMs, etc., may operate at this stage. Huh? A lot of this is your execution finesse. How good are your product specs will determine how good is the product that is being built. And I'm happy to take a talk on product specs. What does actually go in the functional specifications of a product? What are the user experiences that need to be done? Now, when I say user experiences, right? If you remember in the previous talk, we talked about wireframing. So at times people do wireframings on pen and paper, at times they use tools, etc. At the end of the day, you're working with the design team to make a user experience that can be utilized while building the product. Therefore, you define the metrics of how will you measure the success of the product. I'm going to take a pause here. If you remember, in all the mock interviews, I have been asking you to follow this structure. Identify the persona, identify the problem. Once you've identified the problem, figure out the user scenario. Then you get into your solution. While you're doing your solution, figure out your ROI, which is the prioritization flow. We also did 2 talks on just technology architecture. Once you have done technology architecture, figure out what is the success criteria of your product. So, and I always keep saying that whatever I'm telling you that you need to do in an interview is exactly what I do in Microsoft every day. So I have just tick marked 6 out of the 11 things that I do during build and manage product phase, which is something that I ask in interviews as well. I will not ask you to build functional specs in an interview. I may ask you to do wireframing. So you see, user experiences are also there. Feature breakdown, you do it to an extent. Like of course you tell features, right? But it's part of a solution overview. Then there are these things. Project management. You have to do it. You have to figure out whether you are on time, not on time, getting delayed, not getting delayed, etc., etc. Which is such a massive art, because imagine you have committed. See, because just imagine this scenario. Huh? When you are building a product, you would have seen announcements being made. Huh? Google Lens will be available to general public on 23rd of September 2022. Let's say I say that. Of course, the product is not ready when I'm making that announcement. Now, since you've made a public announcement, you are now going back and trying to figure out what is shippable. Therefore, you prioritize. Huh? And I'm talking about real life. Huh? This is not made up. This is what I deal with every day. There is a deadline. There are some major events happening. You would have seen that in Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Google, etc. There are big events that happen, and in those big events, some big announcements are made. Today we are releasing Azure Synapse or some big product, right? Literally, in teams work backward from that day. Why? Because we know if Satya Nadella is on stage and he makes the announcement that this product is getting released, we will get free advertisement and traction. Like, would you listen to me telling you that I've released a product, or you would rather hear Satya say that, right? So we work backwards. Now I need to make sure as a product manager that am I delivering the product in a shape which is even demonstratable by my LT, by my leadership, right? So you work backwards. So project management, as commoditized it may sound, becomes super critical. And at times when you're not on shipment time, then what do? Do you get more engineering help? Do you need more sales help? How do you augment? Do you cut? At times you do product cuts, scope cuts, etc., etc., etc. Very, very important. So all of those who have that project management finesse and skill, my goodness, that is going to come so handy when you're doing product development as well. Okay. But just this, without any of this, is a recipe of disaster because this is needed. Okay, then I talked about testing. So if you see, testing is very, very important. Quality of the product is in the hands of the engineering team as a whole. And when I say engineering team, you are an extension to the engineering team. Is the product of a good quality enough that it should be released is your call. You make that call as a product manager that should I be making this feature available in the next release or not. And I'm not talking about the 23rd September big announcement. No, I'm saying even every month or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks when you're shipping a product, is it of a quality that is shippable is your call, not somebody else's call. Now imagine product is ready. You have done the project management, all the risks were identified, you have done the testing, etc. Great, kudos to you. How do you bring people around you together to ship this product? I'll tell you a small instance. When we build products, right, and these are terms that you will hear in almost all product companies, right? When you build a product, you need to have a set of early adopters around you, right? People who will test your product and give you early feedback. You are responsible to find that early adopter cohort. Who is that early adopter for you? Okay, because you don't like no products are shipped like a big bang. Hey, I built a product, world, please use. It doesn't happen like that. It's always I have an MVP. Maybe it's a very, very bad MVP. And I have 10 early adopters who are going to check that product and tell me and give me feedback. And then therefore we have a non-disclosure agreement with those early adopters. At times those early adopters could be small users, they could be big enterprises, they could be experts in that area, whoever it could be, right? You are responsible for building that early adopter cohort. Once you've built that early adopter cohort, how do you maintain relationships within the community to make sure that your product gets adopted well? I will give you a very, very small example. If you, for those who are new, I'll tell you I was owning a product called Azure DevOps, and I will show you that. While we were owning Azure DevOps, right? Azure DevOps is a product which is meant for developers, right? Developers use that day in and day out. In our small cohort, right? Where will I find maximum number of developers? In Microsoft only. Microsoft has all the developers, right? So I had a community of Microsoft developers who used to give me early feedback, and you'll be shocked to know if I tell you that by the time a product reaches the masses, I release that product capability a month earlier. So if you see the product capability in February, I released it in January, and for that 1 month, it was with my early adopters and with my Microsoft engineers, and then it went to some of my very big customers who are willing to be giving me that feedback, some administrators, other people in other countries who are giving me feedback, and based on that release cycle, which is I release something in January, they kept giving me feedback throughout the month. I will actually release the feature in the month of February. I've just made up these timelines. At times we don't take that time. We just take like 1 week, maybe 4 days, right? 3 days, whatever the case may be. But the thing is that you build that community, you build that workflow of release cycle and customer engagement. It's not it's like a lot of PMs get into this mad race of just shipping features. Features ship karo, features ship karo. Let's fetch more features, and therefore I'm growing bigger. No, it's not like that. It's not just shipping features, right? It's about learning from those features that you're shipping as well. Last time we talked about at times we use the language of we are not even shipping features, we are shipping experiments so that we can learn from them. You are responsible for that customer engagement. Are you getting feedback? Have you even opened avenues for customers to give you feedback? I remember I was working with a startup in Bangalore. They built features one after the other, and they had some great customers. The only way for those customers to give them feedback was during a weekly meeting. You would say nothing is wrong with that. Because of that, you won't believe that startup was going out of business. The reason that they were going out of business is they had made the process of learning from their feedback, from the features that they have shipped, so complex and so much dependent on that Friday meeting that imagine I shipped something on Friday. It's broken on Monday. They didn't have, and it was not that, oh, customers can't reach out. Customers can reach out. But the protocol you have set is let's talk on Friday. So even if something is broken, right, I'll wait till Friday. So that was a habit that they had inculcated in the customer's mind. I always say, as a great product manager, find repeatable and easily accessible methods for customers to reach to you. You want to make 7 such avenues, make 7. You want to make 70 such avenues, make 70. For example, when I used to ship features, right, I used to give so many avenues for my customers to come back to me. We used to write blog, we used to write tweets, we used to put it on LinkedIn, we used to ship release notes, and what else? I had 7 ways. Oh yeah, then we had a portal in which customers can go and directly give us feedback. Then we had a GitHub repositories. Customers used to give feedback there as well. Fan out. Make your customers' life super simple to reach out to you. But then keep an eye on that as well. Don't drop the ball on customer feedback. Now, if you see, this is what you're doing while building and managing product. A lot of people ask me, Sandeep, what are the soft skills needed to be a great product manager? I will tell you some soft skills. A lot of soft skills, by the way. Some of which you will feel, this is sure I have it. Some of which you will feel, oh, what the heck is this? I've never heard of this. Okay. So with that in mind, I'll show you some soft skills. Read through this. Stakeholder management sounds pretty obvious. Of course, I should be able to manage stakeholders. In product management, right? See, when you manage stakeholders, right? Stakeholder management comes by virtue of 2 things. One is authority. Authority is you have people reporting to you. So when you say, they will 7 out of 10 times listen to you. 3 times they will raise their voice also, but at times if your voice is stronger, they may not re-raise it again. Then there is another type of stakeholder management which is coming through common goals. Okay, you have a need, they have a need, it's a common need. Therefore, you are able to manage that stakeholder to on the purpose of needs. In product management, what you will realize is at times both are not there. At times you don't have this reporting hierarchy where people are reporting to you. Will legal report to you? No. Will sales and marketing report to you? No. Do you need to get work done from them? Absolutely yes. Even your needs may not match. For example, your need is your product to be kick-ass, right? Legal teams maybe P0 requirement, like something most critical for them is how do I get this lawsuit settled, right? Their need is totally different than your need. They are not thinking about product at that time. And I'm saying maybe your design team is working on 10 products, out of which one is getting released tomorrow. So they have to spend all their time in releasing that feature that goes tomorrow. Yours is going 2 months later, but you need to get the work done. So stakeholder management, when you don't have common needs and when you don't have authority, is something that you are responsible for as a product manager. It's not that simple. Some people try to take that bullwhip and try to get things done. Does not work. In product management, does not work. Rather, I would say in leadership, it does not work. So keep that in mind. And therefore, the second point, how do you operate without authority? Because you are a glue with so many teams that if you start showing authorization, and you're not authorization, but if you start showing authority to get your work done, nothing is going to happen. People will do it because you're part of the same company, but the next time you call them, they will try to stay disconnected. Communication skills, unbelievably important. Again, communication skills is very simple, right? It's not about your eloquence in speaking. It's not about how well you speak. It could be at times about what to be spoken and what not to be spoken. Communication skills is as much about speaking as much it is about silence. How do you manage that? How do you generate clarity? How do you bring energy into the team? So that's why I'm for every point, right? I'm breaking it in terms of how we always think of communication skills is, oh, the person speaks great English. It's not that. It's about what are you speaking with whom? Are you asking the right questions? That is communication skills. Okay. So it's way more than am I able to speak well. Growth mindset. Okay. Imagine you have worked on a product spec for 2 months. You have been investigating how to make the next kick-ass feature of YouTube. You have talked to 40 customers. You have done your cohort analysis, figured out who your early adopters are. They've given you great feedback. You did wireframing, amazing. You get into a meeting with a bunch of engineers, and there is a junior engineer saying, hey, who will buy this? This is absolutely not working, man. I know some YouTube guys who will completely not accept what you have done. What do? You go inside a shell. You say, तेरे को क्या पता? What do you know about this? I know better. What is your mindset at that time? Especially when you get cornered in product management, accept that your ideas will be thwarted. You will put 5 months of effort and somebody out there will come out and say, crap idea, won't work. Even if your vice president of the company has accepted, somebody out there will come back and say, not working. What mindset do you have at that very moment when you are being told that bekar idea yaar? Okay, that is growth mindset. How do you validate your learning from that person at that moment without getting into that shell of तेरे को क्या पता, you don't know anything, I know everything, etc., etc. The growth mindset is about being a learner at all times. It's easier said than done. I have seen a lot of PMs, a lot of leaders fall into the trap of I know more than you do. Doesn't work in product management. Be humble. Make sure that you are in a learning mindset 24/7. Operate without authority when you are communicating, but with authority when you are communicating your idea or pitch. And that authority of communicating your idea and pitch comes from your own research. But if you are being questioned, then be humble enough to listen. That's a short story of growth mindset. Critical thinker, you have to be such a critical thinker. Rather, I would say critical thinking and creativity is an aspect that we check very actively during interviews. For those who have done one-on-one interviews with me, I would have told you I was checking you at this stage on your creativity. Your solution was there, but yeah, it was not like you didn't hit the ball for a home run. It didn't sound like a sixer mara. It sounded like, I've heard of these features earlier. How do you bring that critical thinking and creativity at the same time? The next three, I've actually copy pasted from Microsoft philosophy for leaders. Create clarity, generate energy, ship success. Super important. I would say these three are so important. In the last talk, we talked about how do you deal with super ambiguous problems. The only way, and we went through the entire cycle of how do you deal with super ambiguous problems. As a PM, you will be thrown in such ambiguous scenarios where you yourself will doubt yourself to understand इसको कैसे solve करना है यार, नहीं पता. You are responsible for generating that clarity when your organization is looking up to you to tell what needs to be done. If you are not quick enough in creating clarity, your engineering team will be sitting there twiddling their thumbs for 2 months trying to figure out what do we do. And it happens. It happens a lot when engineering has nothing to work on because PM is delayed in creating clarity. How do you generate energy? If you have bought onto an idea, how do you make sure that others, they get pumped up, like they should get goosebumps with your idea? How do you do that? How do you generate that energy where everybody feels they back you with their idea, that your voice becomes their voice? How do you do that? That's called generation of energy. And then purely on the execution standpoint, how do you ship success? And here success is a very broad term. Success is not just customer value and business value. Success is also about how do you take somebody else's idea and somebody else's problem and make it your own. How do you invest in other people's success? Okay, it's not just I'm shipping success so that I get a promotion. No, it's not that. It's about how do you make others succeed. That is also very important as a product manager. Okay. Last is influencing for impact. I talked about this. You are a glue which talks to so many people. You cannot be that glue if you are not an influencer in your organization, your team, or at least this cohort. You want people to work for you, work with you, with the intention of मजा आएगा यार काम करके. They should be energized to work with you, not because corporate boundaries. I have to do that work because I'm getting paid for it. That's not how products are shipped. When product shipment happens, product ideation happens, right? Your team for the next 6 months when they are building that product should feel that this is the next big thing that they should do and can do in their lives. That's called generation of energy and influencing for impact. Soft skills are not done. They continue. Lot of soft skills. Adaptability. Imagine you have worked on a feature. You have worked on a product for 2 years. Okay. It's reaching amazing. Huh? It's doing great. And I say, oh, great job done. Exit the product. Now take up another thing. You have to start from scratch. Are you adaptable to that? Adaptability also comes from the previous example that I took, right? Where I said that, yeah, sure, you research for 2 months. It's a bad idea, right? How do you become adaptable to those? So you kind of get a thick skin while having a learning attitude in your mind. And that's what brings adaptability. Storytelling. I have written a complete blog on storytelling. Great product managers are great storytellers. I have personally witnessed a great idea being told in a mundane story and nobody bought it. I have personally witnessed the same idea being told in a compelling story fashion and people are like, wow, this is the next big thing for us to do. Trust me, it happens. Great product managers are great storytellers because storytelling to an extent influences this. You are able to generate energy with your storytelling ability, and it's an art. It's an art that you can potentially learn. Okay. These two next are very, very important. See, as a product manager, right, you may be operating with autonomy. Autonomy means you are your own king or queen. You are autonomous. You're an autonomous body. You can operate on your own while you are also ensuring alignment. Alignment here means, are you aligned with your business objectives? Are you aligned with the business goals? See, I'll give you a small example. Let's say, hypothetically, I'm saying, there is a great idea you have, fun to idea. And that idea is, I don't know, I'm just going to make it up. You want to make the next best algorithm to make noise reduction happen in an earphone. Brilliant. And you believe this will revolutionize the headphone industry. Brilliant. But those ideas are as good as whether they fit into your business objective or not. Are you aligned with your business? Are you even aligned with your organization? Are you aligned with your business objectives? It's very important for you to do that. You operate autonomously, generate great ideas, but don't forget the business at the same time. It's very important. Because otherwise, like so many times we hear where product managers bubbling with energy come up with great ideas, but they totally forget about the business side of it. We are here to, for a particular business objective, right? That needs to be managed. Now imagine, I have just said, as a PM, you are talking to UX, design, research, engineering, other PMs, leadership, legal, sales, marketing, partners, customers, and I can just go on and on and on and on and on. Imagine how much time do you have left in a day after doing all of this? Not much, right? Therefore, your time and energy management becomes so important. Don't burn out. I burnt out in my initial days in my career, and I felt I was so exhausted that I would, even if after taking holidays, I would feel that I don't have the energy to work. It happened with me. Again, I've written a blog on it. Go read it. Your energy and your time is in your hands. You are not here for a sprint. You are here for a marathon. You need to go long. You don't need to run 100 meters, right? You need to run 45 kilometers. How do you do that as a product manager? You're not here to build one feature or one product, right? You are here to revolutionize the industry. How do you do that? So that's around time management, energy management. The next one on biases, and after these three, I'm going to take a pause. Your own self-awareness is so important while doing product management because Imagine, and I'll tell you, this happens, and this is a real life example which was shared with me in a workshop. I had a bias, and that bias was when getting introduced to my team, when I knew that a particular person is from the same B school that I am in, right? I would automatically auto align to that person a little bit. I would have a soft spot for that person. Why? Because we have something common to talk about, the same professor, same school, etc. My mentor told me once, he said, Sandeep, have you ever realized one thing? I said, no, what? He said, whenever the idea comes from this guy, right? You are very receptive to that idea. More often than not, you have included his idea, whether it's good or not. There is a bias in you. Okay. And these biases only come by reflection. Like you have to evaluate whether there are biases in you that can result in product not going the right way. And my mentor also told that, by the way, all your accepted feedback from him had zero impact on the product. But I see a bias in you. How will you identify that bias and eliminate it? And these biases could be so many, right? So many. Read about what are the biases. Like so many. There is I give you a very small example that almost all PMs have that bias. And that bias is called, since I've spent 3 months trying to understand that problem, now when I'm doing my storytelling, right? And that is the beauty about storytelling. When I'm doing that storytelling, I will almost assume that my listening party knows about some of the things, even though they have not spent even a single minute understanding my idea. That's called experience bias. A lot of people do it. There is something called a solution bias, which I talk often in my interview session. I give you a problem, you give me a solution. That's called a solution bias. You already have a solution running in your mind. And when you have that solution running in your mind, your problems sound like the opposite of the solution. I'll give you an example. Let's say if I ask you that, hey, let's build a payment gateway for retailers. Suddenly ideas will come: Paytm, Bharat Pay, QR code, etc. Your problem will be, oh Sandeep, I know there's a problem. The problem is that the retailers don't have a common interface that they can scan and pay. Why? Because the solution is in your mind called QR code from Bharat Pay. Therefore, you're saying, oh, the problem is that there is no common QR code by which a retailer can accept money. That's not the problem. That's the opposite of the solution. Okay. Solution biases are very common amongst PMs. One important thing, please reflect as a PM on the choices and the principles by which you are making decisions. Once you start reflecting on the principles of making decisions, you will identify your own biases. At times, have a mentor or a coach who can be your eyes and ears. Your mentors and coaches can see through you than you can self-reflect. Okay. I've talked about this a lot. You are the glue between everyone. Therefore, you are responsible for bringing everyone together. You are responsible for this. You are responsible for this and this. You bring everyone together. That generates energy, which allows you to create clarity, which allows you to ship success. Okay. Last but not the least, question the status quo. And that status quo could be anything. It could be around engineering efficiencies. It could be around the way you are working. It could be around the way you are writing your specs. It could be around the way you are interacting with customers. It's around the way you are doing project management. Question yourself on everything. Can I make it better? Because you don't need to make things better in one big bang. You need to make one tiny adjustment every day for you to become from good PM to an absolutely extraordinary and great PM. I'll take a pause here for questions, because after this I'm going to be talking about your promotions, which I'll take 15 minutes. Any questions?
So, Sandeep, what will be some good ways to create clarity in general? For example, you are in a meeting and people expect PMs to have all the answers and you don't have it at that point of time. So, is it always acceptable to go back and take some time and do some homework and come back?
Prashant, it's a relative answer. So one approach that you mentioned is absolutely right. But one thing that you should always do in a meeting is, if you don't have an answer, make sure you understood the other person's perspective completely. That is very important. At times, what happens in a lot of meetings, right? What I will see is Hey, Sandeep, have you thought about this particular scenario? And like, oh no, no, yeah, nice, pucha, shit. Oh, you know what? I'm not thought through. I'll come back to you later. Don't do that. If somebody said, have you thought about this scenario? Go question. Imagine the person who's questioning you is your customer. Do you just say, oh, I'll get back to you? No, you will try to probe further. Exactly the same way we do in our PM interviews. I give you a question, you ask me more questions to generate clarity. Ask those questions. The best way to generate clarity is to ask probing questions. That's why, if you remember, the very first thing I say in your PM interview is ask me questions. If I tell you that, guys, let's go build, I don't know, a refrigerator for the blind, don't assume you've understood everything. Ask me probing questions. Why am I asking you to build a refrigerator for the blind? That is called generating clarity. Are you able to generate clarity? Okay. So different ways, huh? Sure, take your time, probe and understand what is it that the person is even asking you to do. At times you'll have to rely on data. At times, by data means you can figure out how can data supplement your decision making. At times you will have to rely on other people's knowledge. You just don't know what you don't know. Therefore, you go reach out to people. You reach out to customers, reach out to partners, reach out to experts, etc. etc. Various ways of generating clarity. Did I answer your
Uh,
Got
question?
it. Thank you. Yes.
Hi Sandeep sir.
Hello, sir.
So actually, my question is not more technical. You have put a light on, they operate without authority. So my
Yes.
question is to you: how much power do you have as a principal program manager? Yeah,
How much power? Power is a very
in
strong.
your team.
So by power you mean authority?
Yes, sort of.
See, I'm telling you, as a product manager, right? You don't operate out of authority. You are never having that mindset which says you do it because I said so. You never operate like that. Even as a leader, you never operate like that. You operate in the aspect of generate clarity. If people are struggling, right? Help them get clarity. Bring them along. You will be able to travel way faster if there are 100 people behind you who are running with you. If you are trying to run a marathon alone, right, I can guarantee you will be slow. If you're trying to run a marathon with 5 people besides you who at times are faster than you, at times slower, and you are pace matching, you'll be able to go way farther. For those who are runners, will be able to associate with what I just said. As a PM, as a principal PM, as a senior PM, as a junior PM, as a partner PM, it does not matter. You don't operate with you do it because I said so. You operate by bringing people along. And by the way, this statement is not only for product managers. This statement is true for any leader. Any leader. And you would have seen leaders who operate out of you do it because I said so have not lasted long.
So managing conflicts due to this thing or operate without authority, does it it seems difficult for the person which is doing so?
No. Managing conflicts does not require authority. Managing conflicts require understanding of the common needs. Whenever conflicts happen, right, you don't deal with the feelings and the emotions and what is being talked about. You go deeper. You go figure out what is this person's need and what is this person's need. And you will find 99% of the time the needs are common. You go deep and then you come up. You go common, find the common needs, and from those common needs you basically bubble up and figure out where is the divergence happening. I can guarantee you, I can give you in writing, identify any conflict, even the Ukraine Russia war. I can guarantee you that the needs of both the countries are identical.
Uh,
Thank you.
Sandeep sir, how would we make sure that we groom the product right? Because in my company we work with another team from along with which we groom the requirements for the
What do you mean
product.
by groom the requirements?
So suppose we when we are building a product, So we work with that team to finalize the requirements for the POs and tech teams.
Yes.
So how do we make sure that we do the best grooming? Because when you are working with another team, they have a certain mindset that we as product owners might not be able to share completely. So
Okay.
they have certain mindset and then they share the requirements with you. Suppose 30% of the requirement, 70% is what we own as part of the requirements, for example. So how do we understand that 30% piece so that we can execute the 100% of the requirements along with POs and tech team?
Yeah. So see, I'll tell you, and I've seen certain organizations that operate this way, where there is a separate team who's close to the customer and the separate team who's doing the execution. I always say this, and I've actually, and I'm not suggesting this to you, I can't operate in this environment. I need to operate in an environment where I'm close to my customer, where I am able to understand my customer's requirements, needs, whether stated or unstated, very close. I need to be a fly on the wall when my customer is operating. If you are able to do that, I can guarantee you that you will still not get 100% of the requirements clearly. Therefore, you start operating on the hypothesis and experiment way. Okay, where even if, let's say, you do not have a very well stated requirement, then what do? You write a hypothesis and you say, in my hypothesis, if this were to happen, then this were to happen later. Right, my customer would behave in this fashion if I do this feature, and I will actually show it to you. Now, with that hypothesis, you launch a tiny experiment, and then you see whether your hypothesis, whether the customer behavior is aligned with your hypothesis. I have not seen a single PM who can guarantee saying I have got the 100% requirements right. That's a myth. It's fiction. It does not happen that way. You always operate on hypothesis. Based on hypothesis, you conduct experiments. Based on experiments, you validate whether you need to either pivot or you persevere, which means, do I continue with this experiment and make it a product, or do I pivot and basically move in another direction? With that question, I'm actually going to show that to you right now. Let me show that experiment, the hypothesis, the capability that was built in 5 days, and I'll show you how it works. Are you game for that?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to move next, and I just use some generic terms. There are a lot of gray lines between this. Yeah. So is there another question?
Sorry to interrupt, Sandeep. So there is a hand raised by Menika.
Yeah.
Sandeep, this is something I have experienced in my various roles in different organizations, and this has been common actually. When I interact with engineers, I have always had a little difficulty in having them commit on timelines. I don't know if you know, like, if there is a problem which needs to be fixed or anything. And I understand from the engineer's perspective because they don't know what's the issue itself which is causing that. What are the mechanisms that you use? Even if it is one, it could be a small bug where we are talking about timelines, or it could be a brand, like it could be a fresh slate where you're actually working on a new project.
Yeah.
But there is a certain struggle always happens when I have to commit in timeline, and also I have observed myself being incapable to question timelines when that comes to me.
Yep.
That is also something I don't know how I can bridge that gap there, where I can say that, hey, this looks like a very very comfortable or a very long timeline. Probably this could have be achieved in 2 weeks time instead of 3 weeks time. Do you have any inputs there?
Yep, absolutely, I do. So imagine, Menika, I tell you, hey Menika, you have to write a product spec on, as I said, refrigerator for the blind. Can you get it done in 3 days, 4 days, 5 days? Give me a timeline. See, you operate in that level of ambiguity, right? Where you don't know customer, problem, business, etc., etc. Therefore, it's very difficult for you to commit to a timeline because you're operating in the ambiguity of this, right? Now, your engineer is operating in the ambiguity of, भैया कौन से line में error है मुझे क्या पता? What technology should I use? मुझे क्या पता? Is it a front end issue, back end issue, middle tier issue? I don't know. Therefore, they operate in the same set of ambiguity. right? So I like what you said, that I understand, I empathize with them. So for every PM, empathize with your developer, because they are operating in a different kind of ambiguity called the technical ambiguity, right? So I totally understand. At times these timelines do not come. There are various things that we do. So at a feature level, right, we do not ask for deadlines. We don't say, will you be doing it by 21st September? We don't do that, right? We generally operate in the agile model where we do t-shirt sizing of features into small, medium, large, extra large, etc., etc. And we have some guidance that, or this feature can be done in a sprint, something can be done in 2 sprints, 3 sprints, whatever the case may be. On the bug front, right, we work backwards. Like I'm telling you how I operate, right? Let's say there is a particular bug. Now I know that these are shipment stopper bugs, right? I can't ship my product if these bugs are not resolved. And I know that there is a drop dead date for me to go ship that product. And I will work backwards from that. That saying that, oh, if this bug is not resolved by this date, then we need to either delay the shipment or we need to figure out other things. And that figure out other things could be many things, right? One could be, let's delay the shipment, which is the worst. The other could be, let's cut the feature altogether. Third could be, put the feature behind a feature flag so that nobody gets to see. Maybe make that code redundant. Maybe put that code in another branch so that we never show it to the customer and they don't get broken. So many ways to fix it. But the point is, what you're articulating is right, that there is a risk. And the risk is, we don't know how much time it is going to take the bug to fix. If that risk becomes an issue, then the job as the product manager is to work with the engineering and figure out how do you mitigate that risk. One obvious mitigation is the bug will be fixed. What if the bug is not fixed? Then what are the 10 different options that you have? That is your job.
Okay.
Okay, and we have done that. I can tell you, last January we were supposed to ship a feature. We had 20 shipment blockers. 20 shipment blockers. Hardly 4 days before the actual shipment.
Okay.
We took a decision to cut 3 features completely. Like, feature is done. There is one shipment blocker bug. We stopped that feature. We said we are not shipping this feature at all. And that's your mitigation.
Got it.